What is this all? Well, this channel is dedicated to empowering families and communities by addressing vital aspects of a child's life, including education, health, growth, parenting, career planning, and counseling. The vision of the channel is simple but powerful. Stronger families build stronger nations, and nurturing children with the right values today creates compassionate, resilient, and responsible leaders for tomorrow. Now, it is my honor to introduce the person behind this initiative, Dr. Shafiq. He is a pediatrician, child psychologist, certified parenting coach, life coach, emotional quotient practitioner, NLP practitioner, and counselor. With his vast expertise and passion for holistic child development, he has dedicated his career to guiding families and inspiring the next generation. So, the topic for today is Legacy Shield: Protect Your Assets, Access, and Family Continuity before it's too late. And for this session, it is my privilege to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. A. Rahim Noor. He's a rank holding chartered accountant and MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur. With over 25 years of experience as an international development consultant, he has worked on projects funded by the World Bank, the European Union, ADB, and DfID. Currently, he is the Chief Knowledge Officer at IPE Global. A passionate speaker and thought leader, Mr. Noor has addressed diverse audiences on leadership, spirituality, governance, and youth development. He has been a past president of Kolkata Toastmasters and a certified JCI National Trainer. If that were not enough, he is also the winner of multiple public speaking titles. In 2012, he founded the Sirri Saqti Foundation, a grassroots youth movement focused on self and social development through servant leadership, and has churned out impactful initiatives such as the Prophet Muhammad Week. More recently, he has launched FabXL, a focused effort to help Indian family businesses grow with clarity and harmony. In addition, he also holds a diploma in Arabic and Islamic studies and has been honored with the National E-Governance Award. Now, without further ado, I hand over to Dr. Shafiq to continue with the session.
Thank you, Dr. Sharik. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. While we wait for others to join, we can't, waste the time of those who have joined in time. So we'll continue the session. And before I invite Mr. A. Rahim, our guest speaker for today, I would like to mention few announcements. If you have any doubts about the session during the session, either you can note down yourself waiting for the Q&A session, or you can put the questions in the chat box. So we'll be taking the questions at the end. Meantime, you are free to put the questions in the chat box. However, during the Q&A session, we can allow you to unmute and speak up if you'd like to. And the speaker is, well versed with English as well as the Urdu or Hindi. So if you feel comfortable in Urdu or Hindi, you can speak up. Otherwise, English is fine. So I invite Mr. A. Rahim, our guest speaker today, for the session. Rahim, sir, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shafiq. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in and welcome to this session. I had this opportunity to meet Dr. Shafiq at a training program, international training program, and there he talked about this audience who's always interested to learn more, who's always interested to know how to grow better, how to be able to, maximize their own efforts. So one of the questions that comes to my mind, and that is something which I've been, particularly concerned with, that very intelligent people, very successful people, often known for success, planning, being adaptive to the situation all across, often work up to a level and then they forget. They forget what happens when suddenly something strikes. And so this particular effort is a means to communicate, is a means to educate about the need to plan the inevitable. It is said, the most certain thing in life is death. And the most uncertain thing in life is the time of death. So, what better way than to plan for the certain, uncertainly timed event? And so, although it may appear a little morbid, a topic talking about legacy, talking about passing on, but it's so important because we've spent our whole life working for something, and what if it just goes up in smoke? So let's I'd like to just share my presentation and the effort to have
Rahim sir, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that everybody is able to hear properly because I suspect some net connectivity issues. Can someone confirm that they are able to hear what is being discussed?
I missed you. There are
Your voice is not
Voice was not clear. Azmat bhai? Azmat bhai, आवाज was clear. The voice was very clear. Rahim sir, are you able to hear me clearly?
है जहां ये
अच्छा.
एक मिट्टी की इमारत, एक मिट्टी का मकान, खून का गारा बनाया, ईंट जिसकी है हड्डियां, चंद सांसों पर टिका है ये ख्याली आसमां, और मौत की पुरजोर आंधी जिस दम इससे टकराएगी, ये इमारत टूट कर फिर खाक में मिल जाएगी. That is the reality of this life. This world that we've created in our minds is just based on a few breaths, and a storm of death will make this entire building of bones and blood crash and mix with the dust. That is the reality. Now, with this rather, I would say, sad opening, or rather looking at the AI 171, I'd like to add that extra spin on it in terms of the people who are living in the non-resident life, right? There are a lot of people who have a lot of support mechanisms to a lot of support here in who are from their original countries, whether India or from others. But a non-resident's life has got certain more challenges. For example, there's a book now by Deepak Unikrishnan on called Temporary People. I mean, it's an interesting take on people living in the Gulf. And it talks about how these people, despite living for decades in these countries, are still considered as temporary resources. And so, although all of us are in a very kind of mortal sense, temporary, all of us are temporary people. But a non resident's life is plagued with different challenges as well. So, what are those challenges? First of all, the uncertainties of working overseas, right? We do know there are a lot of uncertainties in terms of policy, in terms of geopolitics, in terms of governments. We don't know what has like happened on the H-1B visa issue. So, this uncertainty always plagues people's minds. There are, of course, multicultural issues of living in two worlds. There is a world that is you are attached to, which is your base country, India or any other country, and then there is the country which you made your home for work, etc. Right? So this is the further dilemma on the people's mind. Most people who move there do move with their immediate family only, and so it's a nuclear family and parenting challenges as well, including bringing up children in challenging cultures and different cultures from their own. The new trend of digital world and its tools has also taken a little bit of challenge for all the people abroad, because there is now so much of technology availability, and unless we are really adept at it, it is possible that we further complicate with all these variables this new spinning wheel of the digital world as well. And of course, we talked about the uncertainty of life, which always remains a variable in our lives. And more importantly, I think culturally, we are also attuned not to talk about death, not to talk about what happens after death, not to talk about how things will be arranged after our death. So culturally, we are not talking about it, but it's going to happen. And then we are stuck up in a world which is different from our own. There are uncertainties, there are a lot of variables there, and so a non-resident's life has got many more variables that is there. So my effort today is to try and give us a framework to think through this, not because it's going to happen suddenly or right now or something like that. Of course not. But it's never too late to be prepared. So just to give us a little bit of thinking on this. So I am sharing with you something called a 3-pillar and 7 decisions framework. If we can just get this out of today's program, that what are the 3 basic principles, the 3 pillars of my legacy plan that I can think of? What are the 7 decisions or 7 steps that I need to work on in order to make my legacy remain, continue even after I'm not there? Then I think we would have achieved what this framework appears. And as I can see that this, Dr. Shafiq is working a lot for children, for the future. And so it's important for us to think in that context. So the first pillar is called protect. And so protect your assets, your obligations, and your compliances, using your compliances. The second is to prepare. The second pillar is prepare. And that is how to look at inheritance after you and digital afterlife in today's context. And the third is preserve, which is to continue your legacy, to continue your succession. So in these 3 broad pillars, we'll be having 7 different decisions, 7 different areas that we'll be talking about today. And then, of course, we'll have some time to take on some questions and think a little bit further about them. So the first area is protect. You've all made big sacrifices. You've all, even as much as left your countries, left your families, and going out, adopted a new place, made that your home, worked over there, worked tirelessly to make your presence felt, and you've been contributing to the entire society as well as to your family. How do you protect this? So we have 3 decision areas under this, and the other two more decision areas. So the first thing is, of course, I want to just share a newspaper article from, I think last year, this is from last year's newspaper, from Business Standard, which says that there is unclaimed deposits with banks have risen 26% over a year to 78,000 crore rupees. This is the RBI report. Now, why is this significant? What does it actually mean? This means that money that is lying with banks for which there is no claimant now, which either means that the person has passed and there is no heir who has claimed, or just people have forgotten about it, people don't even know that it exists, is 78,213 crores. That means this money is not claimed for 10 years at least, after which the government is supposed to the bank is supposed to transfer this to a certain account. Now, this means on an average in the last year, 23-24, 32 crore rupees was considered as unclaimed deposit every day. Every day, 32 crore rupees equivalent was transferred out as unclaimed deposit by the banks to RBI's fund. What does this mean? It means that it could be people who've left India, their parents are here, and their parents pass, and the money remains in the bank, and people are not even aware about that money, and eventually that money ends up in this fund. What is this fund and why was it made? This fund is called the Depositor Education and Awareness Fund, called DEAF. Any money that is not claimed for 10 years lying in any bank account, whether a savings or a FD, is transferred by the bank to RBI. Yet, it does not mean that this money is lost. It means that if you know that you are eligible for that money, you can go and make a claim and you will be given that money also. The point is not that. But the fact is, what I'm trying to highlight is that assets are lost. 78,000 crore rupees worth of assets are lost, which have fallen between the cracks because perhaps people didn't know that such accounts exist. People were not told by those people whom those accounts belong to that they can claim that. In fact, this money became so big, the government had to institute a new fund, a new scheme, and to create a new portal, which was called Udgam. RBI made this account. So it's an unclaimed deposits gateway to access information. So if anybody of you wants to look at this, you can go to this site called udgam.rbi.org.in. You can set in your, register for it, and then you can search with your parents' name, with anybody else's name whom you think could have an account which is not claimed for 10 years at least. And if you identify that, you'll get to know about 32 banks are listed on. If any of those banks has an account in that name, you can fill up KYC form and claim that money from the bank. But that's not the essence. The essence is that in case we are not able to manage our assets properly, it may also fall within the cracks and land up in such accounts anywhere else. So how do we avoid this? How do we save ourselves from this and give our whatever, funds that are there to our children? Now, why does it happen? Because there is information asymmetry. When we are maintaining our bank accounts, we are often not sharing it with others. So we don't have a place where all this is consolidated in one place. We have scattered documents. I mean, obviously, there are some people who are very well planned, and most others are not. There is also an absence of clarity in terms of, some money is lying here, some money is lying there. Well, we had to open a new account for so and so purpose, so some money was kept over there. We don't even have a clarity on how many accounts. Some people we work with don't even know how many accounts they have. And then, we don't talk about money with our children. We don't talk about what happens if we're not there tomorrow about money. So we just, kind of put it under the carpet, and then it's too late sometimes. Today, there's also a world of online records. So sometimes it's also difficult to find out how much money is lying where because there's no passbook, there is no checkbook, there is nothing which shows you physically that such an account exists. So because of all these, it's very important that we take the first decision in terms of our legacy management, our legacy shield. And that first decision that we have to take is called we have to prepare an asset listing, an asset list. Now, it might appear very obvious, very simple, but you'll be surprised at how many people actually do it. In fact, I'd like to ask if all of us here, I mean, I'm sure you can put something on the chat. Yeah, you should be eligible to do that. So can you just tell me if you have a clear listing of all your assets, which you can say share with your family and say, these are all the assets, these are all the bank accounts that I have, these are all the access passwords for that or whatever. But is there a listing, even a basic listing of all bank accounts? Can you put a yes or a no in the chat so that we can just see that? Yeah. So no. Anybody else would like to share whether they have something some such statement? No. Yeah. No, and I don't think it's something bad. I mean, to be honest, we worked with a lot of people and most people don't have it. And especially in Indian context, it's even more because there's a lot of things to keep people busy and they're always busy on something or the other, especially businessmen. They're worried about business and don't have time to look at these things. So I tell you that take out a day, take out a weekend, take out a holiday and just put your mind to it. It's not that difficult, but it needs a little bit of discipline to sit down and do it. Yeah. So we're always busy with some other things. We're always worried about other things, but we forget that what happens is in case we don't have this list easily available. So what should this document have? What should this document have? I'll be sharing some formats and templates also, but just to give you an idea, it should cover all your bank accounts, your fixed deposits, your mutual funds, your SIPs, your stocks and accounts that you have, demat accounts, your real estate assets that are there. Sometimes we don't even know this, right? Banks sometimes are known, inherited real estate assets. Often we don't talk about it to our children also. So having all those helps a lot. Insurance policies, if we have golden valuables, vehicles. I mean, there is so much. Some things are very obvious, like vehicles, etc., may be known much better. Loans given and taken, will come to the taken part later, but the givens part, yes, whatever is digit is claimable, we should have it. Our digital assets, if any. Today, we also have people who have invested in digital assets, right? It could be NFTs, it could be crypto, whatever it is should be known over here. And even subscriptions and auto debits. So all these, if you were to list it out and keep it available, it will really, really help in the transition. So we have some sort of a small, template that you can use. So asset type could be there, location, especially since, some people straddle across countries. You should know that institution, which organization, what is the details of that, who's the owner of that, who's the nominee, if any. Every account has to have a nominee. You know that, right? Many cases. So do we have that nominee identified? What's the approximate value? Where are the documents stored? And what is the action required, if any, and then remarks. So this could be a starting template for an asset list. So that's the first decision I want us to take. And I want us to understand the importance of this. Oh, such a simple idea, such a simple thing. Yes, you're right. It's a very simple thing. But as it is said, we trip on pebbles, not mountains. Obviously, 78,000 crore rupees has gone because somebody did not make out a sheet like this. And what is worse than leaving our family, leaving our country, going out and earning and keeping ourselves, contributing over there? What is worse than all the sacrifices we have made is to not even allow our next generation have access to that. So this is the first decision that I want us to take. The second decision that I want us to take in this context is obligations listing. We know that there is a lot of responsibility on us. Sometimes we do have to take some loans. Sometimes we do have to take some debts. Sometimes an asset that we're looking at may actually have matching liability, maybe from a friend, maybe from an institution. Now, institutions are easy to identify because they remind you about the payments or repayments. Sometimes friends and informal amounts are not identified, but it remains a liability and a moral duty for that person as well as family. So how do we do this, and why should we really do this? So again, all the assets that we have, what are the liabilities that we have? So having a similar register for this. Who's the person we owe to? What type of liability is it? Where do we owe it? What is the account or loan number? What is the amount? What are the repayment terms? Who's the guarantor, if any? What's the repayment plan? Where are the documents for it? And what are the remarks? So again, a very, very simple thing, but you'll be surprised. We've had cases where people have come to us saying that my father passed, and there's somebody who's come and said that he owes 25 lakh rupees to this person. And we have no idea. And you know how guilt we feel, when somebody comes and says something is due for our parent, and we almost like feel that if we do not fulfill that, it's like a moral duty which is there even for the afterlife. So having such a statement here, which shows clearly that this amount is due to this person, helps your children, helps your next generation clear those loans and be sure that this is only the amount that is due. So it also dissuades people who may be misusing your father's name to be able to fleece you or to just cheat you from some money. So having this as a second decision could be a very useful step as well. The third decision, but before going into that, I just want to mention that there's a lot of law changes, and being in two countries, we have to comply with two sets of laws. Of course, we are complying with whichever country we are in, but we also have to comply with the laws that are changing in India. And therefore, the third decision is so important because not doing that is just, you not being aware of that is going to put you potentially into trouble. For example, this is not for NRIs, but this is an article about some people in India who invested in Dubai. And this is just of this year's July. And they had a lot of issues because they had income tax, letters sent out. They had ED letters sent out because they had some, documentation issues and things like that. But what I'm trying to say is that you have to comply with two country laws. And so while you are an NRI, there are a lot of exemptions given. There are a lot of, sort of leeway available in terms of compliances from India because you are an NRI. But the moment you are back, all the Indian laws compliance becomes mandatory. So what I suggest is every year, let's create a third decision. And this third decision is an annual compliance check. You need to check with somebody who is knowledgeable about the changes that have happened in the last 1 year, who's knowledgeable about what impact it has on you, and to check whether all our compliances are correctly done or not. Now, what are those compliances like? What can they be? Just in this example, I'm giving you an illustrative list so that you can start thinking about this, and then, of course, it'll have more things. For example, there is a tax compliance requirement in India. If your income in India, you see, as an NRI, your income earned abroad is not subject to tax in India. That's fine. But if you have any Indian income, that is subject to tax if it exceeds the minimum exempt amount. Now, for example, you may have a property in India in which you receive rent. You may have interest on your NRO account. You may receive dividends. You may also have a business if possible, if feasible here. All those incomes are your Indian incomes, and Indian incomes remain taxable in India. All the other income that you earn abroad is taxed there, not here. So ITR2 is to be filed in case you have income beyond the exempt limits every year. Second point, you also have an NRE account. In fact, I hope we all know this, that NRE and NRO are the only two types, on a couple more types, but non-resident accounts are the only accounts you can hold. In case you had an earlier account, for example, an ordinary savings account, when you move abroad, you have to convert that to an NRE or NRO account. If you do not, if you hold a normal savings account, it itself is a violation. So we have to be aware of these compliances. So NRE interest is tax-free, but the moment you come back to India, it becomes taxable. So please understand, the moment you are back, you have to convert all your accounts back to resident accounts, and then that income becomes taxable as well. Now, there is also a schedule which has been recently added, which is called foreign assets disclosure. So, for example, once you come back to India, you become a resident. Today, you don't need to do it. It's not a part of ITR2. But if you're back in India, if you're a resident, you've got to start filling this asset also in case you have a bank account abroad or any assets. There is also a lot of FEMA compliances. I did mention to you that NRE, NRO designation on returning is a requirement, and also overseas assets. And there are a lot of penalties. We do know there's a lot of law changes. But so what I'm trying to tell you is that we did no different. We did nothing different. We did nothing new. We didn't do anything. But just because of the change in laws, we might be guilty of not complying. So make an effort of every year trying to check up on compliances on various aspects. I've just given a short checklist over here. I mean, could be a compliance area. For example, my residency status, has it changed over the year? Because it depends on the number of days you stay. So even if you're coming and going, there could be some time to change in residency status. What is my income tax compliance in India? Is it done? Is it all right? My income tax overseas, is that done properly? Is my FEMA and RBI regulations compliance done? Are my bank and financial accounts compliance is done? For example, KYC. You're required to do that every other year. You're required to keep your account active by using it, operating it every 3 months, right? Your property and assets, if you have over here, are you paying their property tax timely? Are you complying with whatever, like survey requirements or anything that keeps happening over there? Of course, we know we all have, relatives, we have family members, but they need to be told, and we need to just follow it up, whether it's there. If there is a business over here that you are having, whether those compliances are being done, if there are insurance investments, whether they are being complied, whether they are being updated, whether their KYC is being done. If there is any legal and estate that is here, whether those compliances are done, digital, if any, in India, as well as family governance. Now, this is an important aspect. And I think since Dr. Shafiq talked about keeping the family and for the next generation, this is an important aspect of keeping the family governance together, keeping the whole family together. Because a part of the family has moved abroad, but there are also common assets. There are a lot of other things, right? So keeping those together. So could be an area for review every year. So I think these three decisions under the first larger head of protecting your assets could be the first decision that we could take. Moving to the second pillar, I talked about three pillars. The second pillar is preparing. And preparing for what? Of course, as I talked about the inevitable, But how do we prepare our family with instructions and readiness for whatever happens tomorrow? Question is, if tomorrow something happens to you, does your family know where to find the right assets, where to find the solutions to those documents that you have, with the access to those? So in this, we've got two decisions that you're talking about. But before I go to that, I want to talk about Sanjay Kapoor. This is a person who tweeted about the AI 171. AI 171, he tweeted about. Very sad to hear about so many people dying, etc., etc. He was in London. He's a very big businessman, as we all know, chairman of Sona Comstar, and also the ex-husband of Karishma Kapoor. He tweeted about AI 171, and the next day, while playing polo in London, he had a sudden cardiac arrest and passed away. That's how uncertain life is. And now his money, his entire asset, which is worth 10,000 crore rupees, is now in turmoil, caught up in legal cases. So, of course, we'll talk a little bit about things later about how to do it. But there are aspects about business. We'll talk later. But in general, what have you thought about in terms of inheritance? Have you even thought about it? We've said, well, it's their problem and they'll see it when it comes. But there will be problems, and as you can see in this case, it does cost his children a lot of funds. So let's look at what is the next decision. Decision number 4, asset inheritance plan. Now, I'm not saying we need to plan out how to actually make the assets inherit, but at least we need to be aware ourselves about how assets are inherited and whether we want any changes, any differences, and for that, how can we enable that in our lifetime? So let's understand a little bit. Now, assets inheritance works a little bit. There is a term called intestate, which is a person who dies without a will. Without a will. If a person dies intestate, then what happens is, we'll come to that, but then to just say, what is a will then? What is a will? A document which establishes how your assets are to be dealt with after death. Now, if a person has no will, that means he dies intestate, then the asset will be distributed as per the personal law of that person, which could be a Hindu personal law, or can be a Muslim personal law, or any other personal law, religious personal law. But if there is a will, if it's a will by a Hindu, it can be made as desirable. It can be fully customizable. 100% of his assets can be decided through that will. If it's a will by a Muslim, as per the personal law, it can only be made for non-heirs. Non-heirs. Non-heirs means those who are, as per Islamic law, eligible to receive your money, your assets. Only for them, and how much? Up to 1/3 of your assets. Now, for instance, I'm just giving an example. There could be somebody who's, let's say, a distant relative, who's not an heir per se, but who's maybe helped you a lot, whom you would like to give something. You can, of course, give it as a gift in your lifetime. Gifts, you can give unlimited in your lifetime, as a Muslim also, and even as a Hindu, everybody, right? But what remains after you go, you can will up to 1/3 of your assets as a Muslim, and as whatever percentage you would like as a Hindu, to anybody else, and especially in Muslim cases, to a non-heir. For example, I mean, we know people who've left out assets to be distributed after their death as endowments, as trusts for their own, benefit in the afterlife. So they've up to 1/3 of the assets can be made like that. Now, if we know this, then we can will it. And then we can have the benefits of that as well. So this is what is, but if it's for Muslims, for a Hindu, it's very much desirable to have a such dispute later. For a Muslim, that will is not applicable to the normal legacy inheritance system, but for others it can be made. Now, succession, there is also, like, I'm just giving you some terms there because these are some terms that people listen to, but they don't know what they mean. There is something called a probate. Now, even if you have a will, some requirements, some countries require, and some places in India also require a probate. They require to establish that this is the last will, this is the final will. So they have a probate sometimes. A succession certificate. Sometimes when there is no will, you need to have a succession certificate. In India, of course, it's required, and in some countries abroad also it's required. Now, as I said, the personal laws of succession for each person, at least in India, are as per their personal laws. So, Hindu Succession Act, Muslim Personal Law, Indian Succession Act for mixed marriages, etc. So, this is how the law passes, how the law works. And we need to know this in order to be able to plan for this. I'm not saying that we need to start planning how much each one gets, but at least be aware of the fact that in case you want to give somebody something in your lifetime as a gift, you could do that. Because after you pass, what works in case of intestate is the personal law. And in case you have a will, as a Muslim, it could only be one third, not more than that. So, using all this, you could work out your succession, your inheritance plan. Now, one more caveat that I want to mention. Like all your accounts we talked about in the asset register, we said that there should be a nominee there. And usually we do have, right, for our bank accounts, for our demat accounts, etc. Now we usually say, oh, that money is safe. That goes to so and so person. We've made this person the nominee for that. Let me tell you, nominee is not equal to heir. Nominee is not equal to heir. This is a massive misconception that people have. Oh, I'm given a nominee, that means he or she will get this money. Nominee is not equal to heir. In Indian law, it means a nominee is only a custodian of the funds to give that funds to the right heirs. It also applies even for joint account holder. Even a joint account holder is not automatically the owner of the balance amount. He or she is only a custodian of the amount for the heirs. So we have to be aware about these so that we can plan who is to be the nominee and how. But in case, say for instance, you can have this foolproof in case of a Hindu, for example, if he or she is named in the will, then that amount belongs to them. And if it is a Muslim, and if that person who is a nominee is a legal heir as per the Muslim law, then that person amounts to him. That person is the heir, that amount belongs to him if it is within the limit of his or her share. I know all these may sound a little complicated, and you might think that, I'm not a lawyer. Why should I really worry about these things? Because if you don't start thinking about it, you won't even ask your lawyers to think about it. So having little bit knowledge about things, I said, I mean, most intelligent people, most hardworking people, people who sacrificed everything all their lives. But when you look at them, after they've gone to the family, you suddenly find they don't know anything about what's left, how to access it, and often it leads to problems. So paying a little bit of attention to this will make sure that all the hard work you've done does not get lost. So this is something that I wanted to share. That's the fourth decision that I want us to think of. The fifth decision that I want us to take is the
Rahim sir,
digital.
shall we
Yeah,
take pause of few seconds?
sure.
Okay. So that they can assimilate what has been said, because there's too many important points in a short period of time. I think they just need to relax for a while. Yeah. Meantime, Sharik, those who have missed the introduction part of the speaker, can you please introduce the speaker again so that people know whom we are talking to?
Hello.
Yep. Sharik, unmute yourself.
Hello. Yes,
Yeah,
Doctor.
you
Can
are
you?
audible. You
Yeah.
are audible. Yeah.
Okay. It is my privilege to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. A. Rahim Noor. He is a rank holding chartered accountant and MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur. He has over 25 years of experience as an international development consultant on projects funded by the World Bank, the European Union, ADB, and DfID. He is currently the Chief Knowledge Officer at IPE Global. A passionate speaker and thought leader, Mr. Noor has addressed diverse audiences on leadership, spirituality, governance, and youth development. He is a past president of Kolkata Toastmasters and a certified JCI National Trainer. He has also won numerous public speaking titles. In 2012, he founded the Sirri Saqti Foundation, a grassroots youth movement focused on self and social development through servant leadership, and has turned out impactful initiatives such as the Prophet Muhammad Week. More recently, he launched FabXL, a focused effort to help Indian family businesses grow with clarity and harmony. In addition, he also holds a diploma in Arabic and Islamic studies and has been honored with the National E-Governance Award.
Okay, Rahim sir, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So we've said we talked about. Okay, thank you so much for the reintroduction. But just to mention that this is something which is very close to my heart, where we see how we are able to at least continue our legacy, especially in the context of people living abroad, people who have, kind of worked their entire life to create an asset despite a lot of challenges. So we were talking about the three pillars on which the first one was, of course, protect. The second is, of course, prepare. And that's where we are right now. And we talked about 7 decisions under them. So 4 decisions we've covered. The fifth decision is, and this is so important in today's context, and something which is again ignored, something which is pushed under the carpet, something which a lot of us, maybe in our age group, do not even understand fully. So we say, oh, it's not that important, which is our digital afterlife. So let me just share with you a news item. This is Gerald Cotton, the CEO of Quadriga CX, a cryptocurrency exchange in Canada. And this is a news item from 2019. This person ran a cryptocurrency exchange where billions of dollars were kept in as cryptocurrency funds. And he was in India for some social work, and he passed away in Jaipur. And the entire exchange could not access any of the funds simply because he was the only person who knew the password. Now, this is an extreme example where it affected maybe thousands of other people. But be sure that if you have a password which you don't have a system to share, it might also be a fallout for at least our immediate family. That is so important to plan out what happens to our digital life after us. And I'm not talking only about passwords. I'm not talking only about them, because there are ways to make your password accessible. I'll talk about that. But there are also ways of how to make sure your identity on the web, what happens to it after we pass. So just to answer some of those questions, I want to strongly suggest that we all use a password manager. I'm sure that most of us here are professionals. Most of us here are aware about these things. These are good practices that are used in many of the countries that we are staying in. And so I'm sure all of us will be using it. But nevertheless, if you are not, please do consider it. It's so important to have one master key to be able to easily access all our passwords. It ends memory fatigue, which is so challenging when we have to maintain so many passwords and keep changing them at will. It's also an easy way to generate strong passwords. We know that there is a lot of cracking, hacking, which is easy to do with simple passwords, but these password managers are able to generate and then store them so that you can access them with a master key. And then two-factor authentication also is enabled. But that's, even in general, we should use a password manager. But there are good password managers that allow something which is very, very useful for us now, and that is emergency access. In case something happens to you tomorrow, you can provide in your life an emergency access button over there. You identify the people, you give them a code in your lifetime, or maybe 3 people, parts of a code, which 3 people have to come together and put that code in, and they will be able to access all the passwords over there. And that's such a big relief. It could be your family, it could be your family and a friend and somebody else, so that all these people must be aware that your passwords are being accessed, must be aware that you are no longer in this world, and they know that this money is to be, or this access is to be given. So I would strongly suggest to use a password manager even on a day-to-day basis, but to use one with emergency access so that you can have your passwords given out to people. There are a lot of cases. For example, there was this case of a grieving father who had adopted a child, and the child died at a very young age, 11 or 12 years, right? And he just wanted his son's iPhone access password so that he could see his photographs, he could see his messages, he could see his photos he saved. And Apple, because of the strong privacy laws, just refused. They said nothing. In fact, he went to the extent of enlisting a hacker. But you know that how good Apple's privacy system and security system is, and they couldn't access. And he was in tears because he said that my son just passed away suddenly due to his illness. And all I want is his photographs, his messages, his emails, so that I can have that as a memory, as a legacy. But unfortunately, no. You know why? And it was his iPhone that he had given to his son, adopted son. but it was not possible. And that's because they didn't set up something called legacy contact. And I want to ask all of you, and I'm sure many of us are using iPhone, I want you to all go to this feature there, which is under settings. You go to your name, you go to sign in and security, and there you'll find this idea called legacy contact. And you can set this up, and that person who is authorized in that can approach Apple with your death certificate, because if he's authorized, and then they will enable them to access certain limited information, such as the iCloud, such as their messages, the photographs, and it is only available for 3 years. But nevertheless, it's important information if you would like. So at least, if nothing, let your memories linger on. Let your photographs linger on. Otherwise, your phone will remain locked. It will never be opened after you are not there. Unless you share your password, of course. But then this is another way of sharing the legacy contact. So I think this is so important for us to do to make sure our digital afterlife is not harmed. Similarly, we all have Gmails, we all have our accounts on Google, so many accounts we are using. And somehow, if we have not shared the password, which is also not right to keep sharing the password in our lifetime, it will also become inaccessible. So Google also has similar tough conditions to be able to access it. So in fact, they've got something called inactivity manager. So if you provide a period, like say 3 months, no operations, that means inactive. And then you give an emergency contact, they will contact him and say, or they can contact and say that this account has become inactive and could you give us access? And they will give the nominated person access. So you can note this, myaccount.google.com/inactive, and create your inactivity manager. I'm not sure if all of us have an iPhone, but I'm sure that all of us have a Gmail account. So please look at this address and create that inactivity manager at the earliest. The third thing is about Facebook, and I know a lot of people are on Facebook and on other tools of Meta. So getting you to the Meta memorial model, and you can actually go there and identify who will be the person who's authorized. So that person will be given limited rights after a person passes to be able to create a memorial post, to create a final post, to change the cover photograph or things like that. And then it will be like a memorial site will be created. Otherwise, you'll keep on receiving messages over there about people's birthdays and so forth onwards. So I think these three things that we can do. One is, of course, our password management system, our password manager, which allows us to have emergency access. And the second one is about access to our digital data, whether it's on Google or whether it's on iPhone and other modes like that, like MacBook. And the third is about our personal social life, for example, our Facebook memorialization. So I think all these things, if we do it, we would have first level of security, first level of digital afterlife secured. Many of us also have good YouTube channels. Dr. Shafiq has got this YouTube channel where he's hosting a lot of these things. What happens to these after it passes? So, I mean, these are also digital assets, right? Having these as assets bequeathed to our family allows the legacy to continue. So, having all these to be planned out also is morbid, but necessary. So, I think this is the fifth decision that I'd like to leave you all with. The sixth and the seventh fall under the third pillar, and that is about preserving. And this is so important, keeping the context of why Dr. Shafiq has started this channel itself. When you are setting up something, we've right now talked about protecting your assets. We've talked about preparing for the inevitable, to creating your digital afterlife, your inheritance model. But what is more important is not just to preserve your physical assets, but also your values, your vision. And some of you here who've also set up companies, who've also set up enterprises, to have that continue. It's easy to transfer assets like houses and shares and bank balances. Very difficult to transfer values. Very difficult to transfer a living organization like a business with the same values that you envisioned when you started it. And although this is a subject of its own, I mean, I don't want to go into an attempt that we will be addressing this over here fully, but I want to say that the biggest lift, the biggest gift that we can give to our children are not those bank accounts, are not those assets that we've just talked about, the listing that we've done. The biggest gift is what we can leave as what we call our legacy letter. You see, as I said, sometimes we don't talk about these things. Yes, there are people who do talk about it a lot. who do talk about, but today's children often don't listen. There's a very interesting film called The Gift, if I'm not mistaken, which talks about a person who passes and he leaves about, I think, 12 messages for his children. And he's supposed to look at each message. It's a video recorded message. And he's got to do some activities, and he does this well. His executor, that means the lawyer, comes and says, well, he left these 12, videos. You've got to listen to each one of them, carry out those activities, show that you've accomplished them, then you're eligible for the next, and so on. And if you access all the 12, then you're eligible to take over his business. And that was his way of building the values and qualities of his son to take over his business. I presume we can't go to that level of cinematic grandiose, but at least we can write a heartfelt letter. We can write, we can type, or more importantly, maybe we can just record it, an audio or a video. So what should we cover in this? What are the topics? I mean, I'm just giving you some thoughts that we can talk about. Why are you writing this letter? What is the intention? Who do you want them to read, and why? What are the people whom you're grateful for, grateful to? Maybe it's a chance to just thank people in your life whom you haven't had a chance to thank. There could be someone who's helped you become what you have become. Maybe someone who helped you when you were in a very, very, very troubled phase. You know what this does? It, of course, makes them feel recognized and appreciated, but it also teaches your children that you value gratitude. And to become people who are also shown gratitude in the future. You see, this letter is exactly the spirit of what Dr. Shafiq's channel is about parenting, about teaching them the values. It's said that values are not what is told. Values are not something which is written down on a wall or a poster and put up. Values are what you convey through your actions. So we do have a lot of opportunities in our lifetime to convey those values by our actions, by our interactions with our children. But sometimes they're not listening. Sometimes they just don't listen. But you know what? Death suddenly presses the high value button. A child who didn't even listen to what his father used to say suddenly becomes interested in what his father stood for. The sad part is his father is no longer there to talk about it. So can you leave this legacy with him, for her? So giving that gratitude and acknowledgement. Then life lessons and principles. What lessons have you learned from life? It's said now everybody can go through life making the same mistakes and learning the lessons, or they can short circuit by learning ours. You want your children to leapfrog, right? As I said, you may have tried to share it earlier with them. They didn't value it. But now that you're not there, they are all ears. Do you have something to convey to them? Faith, purpose, and perspective. What is your philosophy? What had been your philosophy about faith? What had been your philosophy about purpose? What is your perspective about life? Your reflections on your work, reflections on service that you did, your reflections on family, your reflections on love, your reflections on relationships. What's your future hope from your children? We always keep telling, "Arey, tum bade ho jana, grow up, become a big businessman, earn money." A lot of things we say, but in our heart of hearts, because we tell them these as young children. But by the time they're old enough to understand the bigger things, they don't listen. So that's your last chance. That's your last plus one chance after you share. I know you've done well. I know you'll do well in life. But what I really want from you is this. If I was to give you 3 pieces of advice for your life, this is what it is. And finally, on giving and legacy. What has been your philosophy of giving? You see, the world is changing. I'm sure Dr. Shafiq will also be agreeing with me that the world is moving to a very highly individualistic and consumeristic society. And people only see one person, and that person is in the mirror. People don't look beyond that. But I'm sure that people who are at a certain age group would appreciate giving, would appreciate the importance of legacy, the importance of values. What is it that you really value? I think if this one letter, this one video, this one thing, and it needs thought. It's not something, I mean, this is something which is the essence of your entire life. And don't think, oh, I'm only 45, I'm only 40. Why should I write this right now? You never know. I mean, those people we talked about at the beginning of this presentation didn't know that was their last flight, last 39 seconds of their life. Today, their children must be wishing that they had something like this where they could have the parents or their uncles or their distant relatives talk about it. So write it at 40, write it at 42, revise it at 45, make another one at 50. You'll also grow with writing it, right? So I would strongly suggest that all the other things are passing on physical material things, but this is what passes on your value. This final decision, and before going to that final decision, I want to talk about this news item which came up recently in July this year itself. VIP luggage. We all heard about this brand as we were growing up. It was the leader, the brand leader. But unfortunately, this brand is being sold out to another company simply because the chairman says the younger generation is not interested in managing the business. And I'm leaving this special eighth decision for those people who are into business. You may be doing all the above things which you've done, but if you don't have the right successors, if you don't have the right succession plan for your business, then you run the risk of creating something your whole life, a 6,800 crore company where the owner has to sell it at low price simply because nobody is interested in running it. So the eighth decision which I want us to look at is the business succession plan, especially for people who are in business. If you don't really work on this, you'll bequeath the assets, but not the succession. You'll bequeath the bank account, the brand name, the product, the factory, but not necessarily the success formula for taking it forward. So I don't want to talk about this much, but it is a fact. And especially in the subcontinent, we know it, that there is a high rate of business failure in the second and third generation. In fact, it said 87% of businesses are finished by the third generation. Look around you and see. Very, very few businesses, especially in the subcontinent, which continue beyond 3 generations. 87% close by the third generation. And if you really want to make a difference in that, you need to follow some principles. And that's what we at FabXL try to do, try to create a business legacy, try to understand how to develop the next generation of successors, try to build their skills, build their interest, create the systems. What we talked about as an individual legacy right now has to be done for a business also. How do you create the business legacy? How do you pass on the values? How do you get those children to be interested who are uninterested? We talked about VIP, but there's another survey by Pricewaterhouse which said that 93% of second or third generation, current generation children are not interested to take the family legacy forward in business. 93%. And forget about us. I'm sure that even Vijay Mallya will agree. His only son is not ready to take on his business. Siddharth. So this is a ubiquitous problem. This is a unique problem. And we have to address this in our lifetime if we really want this to work beyond us. So legacy, personal, fine. But business legacy, little more complicated. Especially if it's a larger family business or things like that, it needs a lot more care. So I'll just leave with that thought around it, that this business succession plan is something that we need to seriously think of if we have a large enough business. So broadly, just to summarize our entire presentation of Legacy Shield, how we ensure that our legacy passes on to the next generation and hopefully beyond, is to look at 3 pillars: protect, prepare, and preserve. And in these 3 pillars, we talked about 7 decisions. To quickly summarize them, the first pillar, of course, as I said, protect, where we look at assets protection, looking at prepare and preserve. So in protect, we talked about 3 decisions. The first is asset listing, obligations and dues listing, and then annual compliance check. We talked about, since people are living in, have two country, multi-country issues. So looking at compliances in both those countries is a very important part, because afterwards it may create problem if they are not complied with. If there is an account in India which has not been updated to non-resident status, there might be an issue later. So complying with that is very important. Under prepare, we talked about an inheritance plan. What are you thinking about? There are options beyond just wills. We have not talked about them here, but there are options such as trusts, which become even more effective. Family trust is a very effective way, but these need thought. So asset inheritance plan, as I said, personal laws also prevail, but then you can also look at wills, and you can look at gifts in your lifetime also if you'd like to do that. We talked about digital afterlife, how to look at yourself, your digital self, continuing or managing that after you. And finally, the preserve. We've talked about the legacy letter and the business succession plan. So I think with these seven checklists, these seven decision points under these three broad categories, I hope it's given you something to start thinking about. Because we spent a lot of time, as I said, working, creating assets. Now it's time to put a little bit of thought on how we can transition this to the next generation, how we can preserve the legacy for the future. With that, I'll hand it up back to Dr. Shafiq.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Rahim sir. It was very, very enlightening session. I'm sure even the audience enjoyed listening to Rahim sir. So much of information and in a very short period of time. Before we open the floor for Q&As, I just want to make a small announcement that the link for the feedback is shared in the chat box. Please do share your valuable feedback so that we keep on improving our webinars. And there is a link for the YouTube channel and Facebook as well, where you can follow our previous recordings and the sessions. Those who are requesting the recording link, we'll try to make it possible as soon as possible. But I'm afraid, people might miss the Q&A session when they're just looking at the links. So it's always good idea to attend the live session so that you can interact and benefit from the speakers. There are people who have joined across the globe. That's why the time difference. Now somebody said they have joined after Fajr. So imagine the time, in their place. So we do appreciate their, struggle, and they try to join the session. May Allah benefit and appreciate their efforts. Okay, the floor is open for questions now. Either you can raise your hand, we'll allow you to unmute and speak up. You can use English or Urdu, Hindi, it doesn't matter. Or you can use the chat box to put your questions, and then we take it to the guest speaker, Rahim sir. Mr. Yusuf has raised. Can you unmute yourself, Mr. Yusuf? Azmat bhai, can you please unmute them?
Hello,
Yes,
Assalamu
Dr.
alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Sir Rahim. Actually, I have the question regarding the asset. How we can create the asset in case of during the after 40, 45, and then how we can protect. Like already you'll explain about the protection, but I want to make our children to be safe side after our age, after retirement age. In this case, how we can spend our fund to investment plan in as per Islamic.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. This is a whole subject called wealth management, getting to plan your asset in a certain way, plan your savings in a certain way to be able to maximize the returns and to also have the right time frame. It's a whole subject called wealth management, and there are professional teams which actually work with this. So I think they will knowing your entire needs, etc. And as you said, with Islamic principles also, I'm sure there are a lot of solutions which address that also. So it could be a mix. First of all, they do is to find what kind of mix do you want, what kind of liquidity do you want, what kind of risk bearing capacity do you have, what is the time frame you have, and based on all these, they do advise based on the capital, based on the available money. They do advise a certain bouquet of options. So investments with returns based on that, investments with locked in periods. For example, if you don't want some money to be touched for, let's say, 20 years, so that it is available at some return to maybe, your daughter who's going to be, let's say, taking on college at that age. So that will be also built in. So it is a professional wealth management exercise that needs to be done, and it has looks at all assets possible, to be able to give you your return with the security, with the kind of conditions that you really have. So I would strongly suggest to look at a personal wealth advisor for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Javed bhai? Okay.
One more thing I want to know regarding the will. During the COVID session, most of the families lost their families. So during that stage, how we can manage to prepare our usually for the property, how we can save our properties once I lost our families, so that I can do that.
What I understand, and Dr. Shafiq, correct me if I'm wrong, is that some people who have passed away did not have the right inheritance documents at that stage, and so today we don't have the assets, and
Yeah,
we may
this is
need.
what I understand. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, see, as I said, if somebody does not have a will, especially in Muslim law, is
Yeah.
not a bar to accessing the asset, right? Because Islamic law follows strongly the principles as per the Sharia. Even in India, we have Islamic personal law, which is allowing that. So what we need to know is whoever has passed away, who are the people who are eligible to receive that? It could be children, it could be other relatives, depending on the who the person passed, who the other family surviving members were, and based on that, you can apply for mutation of that property in your name. Once the mutation is done in your name, you become the owner, and you can then think about how to further transition it. If in case you want to have, as I said, a trust, you can always transfer it to a trust later. If you want to gift it to somebody, you can gift it to somebody, and so on and so forth. Usually, a large property which is divided into a number of people gets partitioned based on this. So it's also called a partition suit. So
Yes. Yes.
you need to work a little bit on that, but there is no harm. In fact, as I said, in Islamic law, a will has little value in the sense that it is only eligible if they are not for heirs and if it is only up to one third of the asset. So if a person does not have a will, 100% of the assets are divided as per the Islamic inheritance principles. So there should be no problem in that at all. There will be usually a requirement of some sort of a succession certificate, which can also be made with what we call a family tree system, a declaration by other people, a witness, etc. to that, and that can be done. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Mr. Javed, can you unmute yourself? Mr. Javed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Thanks, Shafiq bhai, for arranging such wonderful session.
Thank you.
Basically, I was discussing with my friend last week. He's working for Aramco. We have some fund, but we don't know where to invest and when to invest. Sometimes, when like yearly once we are going to India and we are investing here and there, but nobody is there whom we can 100% trust, who can manage our these all accounts. So can as Mr. Noor is like from CA background, can he can be our advisor, or like you can you like advise somebody who can help us to do this all wealth management? This is my question.
Okay, sure. So one is, of course, there are, I mean, for you, the avenues of investment are not only in India, but also abroad. So you can also think about that. But in case you're thinking of in India, yes, there are organizations that do provide this service. But to remember that these services are not, like provided with any surety of return. A lot of people look for safety and surety of return, but that is really difficult in the markets that are, very volatile. So yes, I can suggest some people, but most of the people look at, as I said, a mix of estate, a mix of stock markets, etc. But in all these, there are a lot of, as I said, compliances you have to keep doing. Please remember one more thing, as an NRIs, I want to mention. Please do not ever buy any agricultural property or any plantation property if you are an NRI. As an NRI, you are not allowed to buy that. You can buy other things. You can buy commercial, residential property, but do not ever look at any plantation or any farming property because any farm, because that is not allowed. So yes, I could maybe be in touch with Dr. Shafiq and look at whether we can set up such a a facility for people who are interested. Inshallah.
Thank you. Anyone I think there's one question in the chat. Personal advice. I think that was answered. Okay. Any more question? Quickly, please raise your hand so that we can conclude the meeting if there are no questions. Amir Mujahid bhai, please unmute yourself. Azmat bhai, can you unmute Mujahid bhai?
Thank you, Azmat. Firstly, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Rahim Sahab and Dr. Shafiq, for arranging this thought-provoking session. MashaAllah, it's really important, I feel. But at the same time, I feel a couple of challenges related to this subject. So I just want to have some advice or short tips from Rahim Sahab how to handle these kind of questions and scenarios. Like you mentioned, Rahim Sahab, in this case, like 87% of the kids are not interested to take the business legacy forward. And at times when I have such kind of discussions with my friends and family about legacy, leaving behind a legacy, I get feedback like हमने क्या बड़ा किया है, हम क्या करेंगे, बच्चे हमारे खुद देख लेंगे, आगे की जनरेशन खुद संभाल लेंगे. So they are not really, because of this distractions and such dynamic busy life, people are really less focused on this subject. So in brief, I think I'll join the session a bit late. So in brief, if you ask, someone is asked you to convince how to encourage people to think about legacy, what will be your very short answer on this?
On a lighter note, Mujahid bhai, we have late fee also. Those who come late will pay some penalty before we answer. Okay, Rahim sir.
Yeah. So the first advice, I mean, of course, you're right. This is a upcoming challenge, and as I said, it's also due to changing situation. The first advice I'd give you is don't talk about legacy, because they don't relate to that word at all. For them, legacy is, even Facebook for them is legacy. They don't even relate to that. They relate to Instagram today. So today's generation, we have to talk in the language they understand. And I am actually working out on a course that I want to start with, sort of retreat where we go for maybe, 5 days with, next generation heirs, and try to make them understand that you may not value it right now, but you want to let it go. You may not value it, but you want to let it go. You want to lose it. I've had this from many people coming up that, we've created all our life, but we don't know what's going to happen. So as you said, some people say that just let it be, they'll take it at that time. That could have been the principle we did as parents also. Why did we spend so much of time trying to build our next generation? And if we did it, it's as much effort we put on our business as well, right? So we want that to also pass on. So we need to work out. And let me tell you, there are certain weaknesses in us. The number one reason why people don't want to follow our business is because they don't want to be like us. They don't want to be like our lifestyle. Papa never had time to attend my school events, which is true. It's a fact. When you are in business, sometimes it's just impossible to do family time. And so they say, I don't want to be that side of a parent. So I reject your lifestyle. That is one of the reasons. So I'm just saying, like, some of it is self-reflecting also. Second is that they also want a lot of changes in business, which they are sometimes averse to or sometimes not encouraged to. So what the way out, I'm just giving you a very broad question, but this needs to be worked with them, is to basically allow them entry through the areas they are interested in, not into the business, but allied areas, and then they ease into the business as they understand the value. Difficult, but worth it, worth trying. Yeah.
Nafis, yeah, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. Appreciate the webinar on a relevant topic. One question was like, could we have this platform to know about halal investment options in India for Muslims, and any sample formats for will or legacy letter that could be used by Muslims, which could be published from your platform? Thank you.
Nafis sir, from where did you join?
I am from LA.
From?
I'm an Indian. I'm on a visit to Los Angeles.
Okay. LA. Okay. Rahim sir, would you like to answer that?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, we can. I mean, see, Indian investments, halal investment, there are certain companies which are actually specializing in this, and we could maybe, connect you with them. There are some products also which do satisfy, and there are people who are working on this area. So I can maybe connect you to some of them. The second is, yeah, some formats I will be sharing to with Dr. Shafiq, maybe a legacy letter format. I've shared some of the others, but a legacy letter, some prompts under the heads. I would really love if even if you have nothing of the others done, I'd really love if you can write a legacy letter. It makes you self-reflect, and that's the real benefit of it. So I will share, inshallah, a draft with Dr. Shafiq, and he will, I think, share it with you all. Yeah.
Thank you. Fazlur Rahman bhai, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
So,
First of all, thanks for arranging such a wonderful session. Just I want to go back quickly to my question. Like my question is like, I'm staying in Riyadh, so most of the time, what happens is like, whenever if we buy any property, like we make it registration on the family's name, like on the family's name or son's name. So in case of any such demise, like how that would be considered, like whether it would be considered on my name or on the family's name, like how it to be taken up.
Generally, it's considered like if you've paid for it and the name is of the, like wife or children, it's considered a gift to them. It's considered a gift to them because that would now be in their name. Since it's in their name, that's perfectly fine. The source of money being yours means that that money was paid as a gift to them and they bought it with that money. So that is how it's treated. Depending on different countries, tax laws, etc., there might be some implications, but in general, that asset is in their name. And yeah, the amount that you paid for that is considered a gift to them. Yeah.
any more question? There's something in the chat box. I'll check. Okay. We'll wait for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. If there's no questions, we'll conclude the meeting. So if you have any questions, please hurry up. Okay. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. First of all, Rahim sir, taking out time from your busy schedule and in sharing so much of important information, especially for NRIs. And I thank all the attendees. Although it's a weekend here, but still people devoted more than 1 hour to listen to us. I hope it was very beneficial to them as well. Honestly, I enjoyed the talk. It was so informative, and this is the area where we usually neglect the area. We are so busy going for job and earning, but we don't know how to take care of the assets. Mr. Ilyas has raised. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, please.
Yeah, thanks and sorry for raising the hand late. Okay, just a quick question.
Late fee applies. Late fee applies.
Yeah, sure. We can adjust that. Just a quick question. Like, Rahim raised about an important point about wealth management team. So just wanted to understand if how can we access this team? Is there any channel to get some professional advice and to better plan our investments and returns and things like that?
Sure. I did say that there are some professional management agencies in India which are, kind of specializing in this area, and especially in Indian market, they're investing. So if there is any investment that you're thinking of in India, I could maybe, through Dr. Shafiq, connect to some of them. But as I said, all these come with a caveat because the Indian markets are also very dynamic, and none of them can be like, very sure about what kind of returns will come. But nevertheless, all I said is that there are some people, but it's also a chance, Dr. Shafiq, to think of whether we can create a network of such firms which can be easily accessing, specializing for NRIs, because maybe most of these are really looking at Indian markets. Some banks are also doing this, by the way. I mean, if you have an NRE account or an NRO account, you could also channelize it through the banks. So that's also a possibility area. But maybe I think the idea is to look at if you can create a network of such agencies which could help in investment, at home for people for possible returns of families or extended families here.
We appreciate that this point has come from the attendees themselves. Actually, we have shared the feedback form, so I request other attendees also to put their, the topics they would like to listen to in future as well, so that we cater to your needs. As far as the investment is concerned, as Rahim sir said, it is a big topic. First of all, your risk appetite, the age you are going through. I mean, the phase of your life, the what to say, like uh, which sector you are focused mainly, depending upon real estate or stocks or the precious metals or things like this. So diversification is another criteria to be considered. And then Rahim sir talked about the succession business plan. So even I mean, the investments have to be done in such a way that at least our dependents should be able to manage those once we are no more here in this world. The other thing is the Sharia compliance is one factor usually the NRIs focus on. So we could work on those instead of just naming 1, 2, 3 or XYZ. We would like to give the options, so you can select, to whom you would like to go with, and then definitely we can guide in this session, and I mean in this direction. So we can bring you expertise and professionals. Definitely, since it's a public platform, we don't like to take particular names, and definitely you can get in touch with us, and we can help you, inshallah. If there is no more question, I thank the participants for being with us throughout the session. And please do leave your feedback in the feedback form, and do subscribe to our channel and do support us in bringing more and more important relevant topics to the NRIs. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.